There's a story about Hank Williams that almost nobody knows. It involves an airplane, a guitar, a bottle of whiskey, and one of Hank's best friends in the music business. Something happened on that flight that produced one of the most beloved songs in country music history. And the man sitting next to Hank Williams on that plane told me the story himself. Now, I'm going to let you decide whether Hank Williams was a genius or whether he was just one of the most charming sneaks in history. Hey folks, welcome back to Highway to Hank. I am your host, Jason Petty. For those of you who don't know, I've spent the last 30 years portraying Hank Williams Sr. on stages all over the world. First off, in the play about Hank called Lost Highway, I did that 2 years at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. And then I spent years doing national tours. Ended up Off-Broadway in New York City, where I was fortunate enough to win the Obie Award for Best Off-Broadway Actor. But during my time at the Ryman, I got to meet everybody who knew Hank. I mean, the Grand Ole Opry stars, the band members, friends, family, and become friends with those folks. And they all wanted to tell me their Hank Williams stories. So I began to write them down and have accumulated 2 boxes worth of notes about Hank Williams and different stories about his life. And I've decided to share them here on this channel called Highway to Hank. Now, this week's story is about one of the most beloved songs in country music history. And as soon as I say the name, you're going to know what we're talking about. You're probably going to hum it. You're probably going to sing it. Everybody's heard it. I heard it as a little kid. It was one of the first 2 songs that my dad ever tried to get me to sing, that my memory. One of them was Happy Birthday, and the other one was Hey Good Lookin. Now, Hey Good Lookin is a magnificent Hank Williams song, but the way it came about is pretty funny. And the way I learned about the story was that I became friends with Little Jimmy Dickens during our Ryman Auditorium Lost Highway run. And we were on stage one day for about 4 hours, just standing there talking. It was an empty stage except for the camera crew. And during the 4 hours, we had plenty of time to tell stories. And of course, he came to see the show. And we stood out in the alley. And it's back when I smoked. We smoked cigarettes back behind the Ryman, right across from Tootsie's. And he told me all kinds of stories about him and Hank. He and Hank Williams, Little Jimmy Dickens, who's from West Virginia. And he was 3 years older than Hank. He was born in 1920. Hank was born in 1923. But a little short guy. I mean, I don't even know if he's 5 feet tall, if he was 5 feet tall. If he was, okay, more power to him. But he made a career of singing a lot of sort of funny songs. I think that's what people mostly know him for, even though he can sing the heck out of a ballad. Another Bridge to Burn is a great ballad that Little Jimmy Dickens does. But it was Take an Old Cold Tater and Wait, Out Behind the Barn. I got my education out behind the barn. My favorite is May an Elephant. No, what is it? May the bird of paradise fly up your nose. May an elephant caress you with his toes. It's those type of songs that people wanted to hear from Little Jimmy Dickens. That he was energetic. But he and Hank became buddies. Hank loved Little Jimmy Dickens. And the way to know if Hank Williams liked you or did not like you, if Hank liked you, you got a nickname. He nicknamed Don Helms, his steel player, Shag, and Jerry Rivers was Burrhead, all because of the type of style of hair they were wearing at the time. Well, Little Jimmy Dickens had had a hit on Take an Old Cold Tater and Wait. So that's when Hank decided he liked Little Jimmy, he started calling him Tater. And people called him Tater to the day he died, which I think was in 2015. So that's how close. If Hank called you by your proper name, he didn't like you. So that was one way to know. But Little Jimmy Dickens and Hank Williams were both performers at the same time. So they were all touring together, on the same bill a lot of times, singing at the Louisiana Hayride. This particular story comes from one trip where they had been on the road together and they had to fly back to Shreveport, Louisiana to do the Louisiana Hayride show. And they were on this little puddle jumper of an airplane. Wasn't very big. I had enough room for about probably 10 or 20 people on it. It wasn't very big. And of course, back in those days, the rides were pretty rough. Well, Hank would get a little lathered up, so to speak, with alcohol on some of these flights. Jimmy would too, but this particular story that Jimmy told me while we were sitting there on the stage of the Ryman Auditorium, no less. He said, we were sitting on the airplane and we could barely hear. And he said, Hank had a little bit to drink. And he sort of leaned up and grabbed the back of my seat and pulled it back. And he said, Tater, are you getting ready to go in a studio or record an album? And Tater said, yeah, in about a month, I'm going to go in. And he goes, you got any good songs on there? Tater said, well, a few, but I could always use one more. Hank said, that's it, by God. He goes, you hang on a couple of minutes. I'm a-fixing to write you a hit song right now. And so Hank leaned back in his seat. He got a piece of paper out. And Jimmy said he could hear him humming. He could hear him humming the tune, the melody. And then he'd start writing, pencil, write. 20 minutes. That's how long it took him to write the song. It took him 20 minutes to write this song. And he made a second copy. And then he went and got his guitar case out of the back, got his guitar out, and he sat across from Jimmy in the other aisle. And he said, Hank worked it out, worked the chords out right in front of me. And he said, all right. And he gave me my lyrics. Hank kept his lyrics. And he said, all right, remember this. And he started playing, Hey Good Lookin'. What you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me? The Tater. He said, my eyes got wide. And he said, Hank's, kind of drunk. He said, I bet Hank ain't gonna remember this. He said, but by God, this is a hit song. I didn't say nothing. I just said, thank you, Hank. Well, that's mighty kind of you. When he got done, he said, all right, Tater, that's your copy right there. You take that in the studio and put that on your new album. That's going to be a hit record for you. And of course, the plane landed and they went to the Louisiana Hayride. Cut to about 3.5 weeks later. Jimmy said he's in Nashville and he's getting ready to go in the studio. He's got that lyric sheet of Hey Good Lookin', and he's getting ready to go in there and record it. And all of a sudden he gets a phone call at the house. And it's Hank. And he's sober. And he said, Tater. Tater said, yeah. He said, you cut that Hey Good Lookin' song I wrote for you on that airplane? He said, no, but in about 3 days I'm supposed to. He said, well, I hate to break it to you, but that song's too good for you, Tater. I'm recording it myself. And Tater said he was just so crestfallen. But he loved Hank so much, and they were such good friends. And he knew that when Hank was on that plane and he wrote that song, he was a little drunk, didn't know what he was saying. But Hank had the business sense enough. When he played it for Fred Rose said, you get that song back. And Hank said, I can't, I gave it away. And he said, well, Jimmy's your friend, he'll understand. And Jimmy did understand. And Jimmy, as he was sitting across from me telling the story, and he's got this wry grin on his face, just kind of almost De Niro, telling a story. And when he got done with the story, he just laughed. He said, that could have changed the whole course of my career. But he said, but I love that man. He said, I love that man. He said that, and that's hard for people from that generation to say stuff like that. He said, I love that man. He said that was his song. And he wrote it in 20 minutes. He goes, Hank had it. And I said, well, what was it? And he said, son, if I knew what it was, I got it too, and I made $1 zillion. But that was the genius of Hank Williams. And it's such a great song. You sing it all the time. So that's the story right there, of how Hank wrote Hey Good Lookin for Little Jimmy Dickens, and it took it back. Now, is he a genius? Yes. Was he a sneak? Yeah, a little bit. But he was a drunken sneak. Now, don't get me wrong. Hank wasn't drunk all the time. Now, later in his career, he might have been drunk and on pills a lot. But early in his career, Don Helms told me Hank would go 6 months and not touch a drop of alcohol. That's when he first got married and had Hank Jr. He said, but then he'd go on a week of drinking all day, every day for 7 days in a row. And said they'd have to throw him in jail and he'd sober up and he'd get back out. And then he'd be sober for a couple of months and then boom, that week would come. But who knows what triggers that. But anyway, Hey Good Lookin. I'm going to put a link for it. I'm going to put one in the description if you want to hear my version of Hey Good Lookin. Of course, as we're doing it now, we're doing a video so I don't get in jail with the copyright people. I have to make a separate song video. So I'm going to put a link for my version of Hey Good Lookin on there. As always, I really appreciate your support. I appreciate you keep watching these videos and keep staying tuned because there's going to be more stories. Do me a great big favor. Hit that thumbs up, like button down there. Hit subscribe. It's free. There's no obligation. And it sure would help me out a whole lot. Also, visit our store. Oh, I got a treat for you. I found it. Look at that. It's a record. It's vinyl. Look at it. It ain't even got a sleeve on it. I wore this thing to pieces as a kid. Hank Williams' all-time greatest hits. It's down in my store. You can buy this on vinyl. And also, I found a really cool RCA Victrola record player for less than $100. It's down in the store. My favorite Hank Williams biography, all kinds of great stuff down there, Hank-related stuff. Somebody even asked me in the comments, are these hats for sale? Well, do you want them to be? That's the question. Do you want me to sell merch? I will if you want. If not, then I ain't gonna mess with it. But I appreciate you so much. Leave us a comment. Thank you all so much for joining, and look forward to seeing you again real soon. If the good Lord's willing and the creeks don't rise, we'll see you for too long.